Hey guys, my name is Victoria Farrell, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on Wachovia Bank. So the beginning of Wachovia Bank, it was founded in 1879 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The bank grew at a pretty alarming rate. It expanded on a global level pretty quickly, and it was helping companies overseas, and it was had over 40 international offices. So it was growing at a pretty alarming rate. People were pretty kind of in shock with how much it was growing. The bank had $4 million in deposits and $1.25 million in stocks. It was labeled as the largest trust operation between New Orleans and Baltimore. The bank merged with another financial institution called Atlanta Corporation and changed its name to First Wachovia Corporation. The merge was a good choice for Wachovia. It created an $18 billion interstate holding company with headquarters within Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and also Atlanta, Georgia. So it was a good choice for them to merge. It was able to expand its headquarters and stuff like that. So the investigation. So basically in April of 2006, there was a jet that landed on the Gulf of Mexico that was carrying 128 cases of cocaine. And Mexican soldiers raided the plane and discovered that the Sinaloa cartel was running the operation. The USDA immediately launched an investigation and discovered that the jet was purchased through money that was laundered through Wachovia. So investigators dug deeper into Wachovia Bank, and they discovered billions of dollars in transfers, checks, and cash shipments from Mexican exchanges in Wachovia bank accounts. So that was pretty suspicious. And then they also discovered that Wachovia did not have a anti-money laundering program. The purpose of an anti-money laundering program is to organize a group that will follow, certain tactics, and they'll act as kind of like security to protect the company from facilitating money laundering or financing terrorists. So it's a big deal to have that, and it's very important. Wachovia law problem. So there was lawful action was taken, but Wachovia actually never saw a day in court. Though Wachovia settled the biggest action under the U.S. Bank Secrecy Act within the District Court of Miami. The bank paid federal authorities $110 million in forfeiture and $50 million fine for not monitoring their cash. The money that the bank failed to monitor was used to smuggle 22 tons of cocaine. The bank was also penalized for not having a proper cash monitoring system. So that's kind of required within financial institutions to have. This resulted in the laundering of $378.4 billion that was transferred in Casa de Cambios within Mexico. So what are Casa de Cambios? Those are CDCs, which are currency exchange companies. CDCs kind of have a reputation of working with drug cartels. So typically banks and financial institutions refrain from working with them because they don't want to get caught up in, legal trouble like that. However, Mexico is one of the United States largest trading partners, and Wachovia saw that as a way for them to kind of expand their bank on a Hispanic level. And they wanted to get into the Hispanic market. So that's what they did. They started working with the CDCs regardless of the risk. So the federal prosecutor statements, I just wanted to say those. He said that Wachovia's blatant disregard for our banking laws gave international cocaine cartels virtual carte blanche to finance their operations. So basically saying that Wachovia was being negligent, and they basically allowed this to happen. The bank paid less than 2% of the total profit that they made that prior year. So people were very angry. People argued that the bank basically walked away free. They really didn't, suffer too much. There was also a lot of financial tension going on because there was the recession. Antonio Maria Costas, he was head of financial banking and stuff like that. He had stated that that banks were working with these drug traders, and it was the only way for banks to remain standing during the recession. People were infuriated by this because they were basically saying that he was being insensitive and kind of saying that it's okay for these banks to do that. Wells Fargo eventually bought Wachovia Bank in the 2008 crash. Wachovia released a statement basically saying that it had nothing to do with the money laundering that they were in, and that Wells Fargo has never done anything illegally like that. The bank also, in their settlement statement, said that as early as 2004, Wachovia knew the risk. Despite these warnings, Wachovia remained in business. So this basically means that Wachovia knew that they're not saying that they knew the money laundering was happening, but they knew that it was a big risk and they took it anyways. So the senior, now I'm going to tell you Martin Wood's story. He was a senior officer at Wachovia in 2005. He had prior experience as a police officer, and this allowed him to kind of have the mindset and able to he just kind of had a way of investigating. So he was really big on knowing your client, and he noticed that Wachovia lacked that heavily. He noticed that the bank had almost zero information on its clients, and they were lacking the basic information and needs they needed for these clients. So he brought these concerns to his superiors at Wachovia, and he found multiple suspicious transactions from the CBCs. He notified the global head of anti-money laundering for correspondent banking and submitted multiple suspicious activity reports. These are called SARS reports. And at least 50 of these that he reported were for CDCs in Mexico. He begged his superiors at Wachovia to put a block on these people and companies that he had listed, typically the CDCs. However, they did not, and he felt very unsupported, which made him kind of concerned. So Wachovia was basically given over 6,000 subpoenas asking for information on their involvement with the Mexican organizations. Wachovia decided, after being kind of hit with a lot of questions from government officials, they decided to close some accounts with the CDCs in April and May of 2007, and with more kind of pressure from the government, they finally closed all of them. Woods felt hurt and betrayed. He felt that, the Wachovia was only protecting themselves and they were putting the blame on him. And then he was told that he no longer needed to file SARS, which he thought was really kind of peculiar. He then got sick, and when he came back to work after he got sick, he had a note on his desk saying that his lack of meeting the work requirements and his effort at work was no longer needed. So he was basically fired, and he was furious with that. So he actually, with all the stress that he endured, he admitted himself into a psychiatric hospital. When he got out, he reached out to the DEA, and the DEA actually, that's kind of how the DEA kind of got suspicious about this. Wachovia signed a settlement from May 2004 to May 2007. Wachovia processed over 373.6 billion in CDCs and 4.7 billion in cash. Wachovia had cooperated remarkably with since being bought by Wells Fargo, and in consideration of Wachovia's remedial actions, the U.S. shall recommend to the court that the prosecution of Wachovia on the info filed will be pushed off for 12 months. So this was basically saying that Wachovia was not going to be held accountable, and as long as they obeyed by the law for the next 12 months, their charges would be dropped. So Wachovia signed that settlement. Woods also kind of sued Wachovia, and Wachovia paid off Woods as long as he did not come forward with the settlement, the ending settlement arguments. There were other people within Wachovia who had been kind of got some public attention because of white collar crimes. However, they weren't obviously big, so they didn't get as much attention. However, this case was huge and got mass public attention and is actually known as one of the largest money laundering schemes in the world. So wachovia is kind of a big deal, and many people have heard of it. So yeah, there's my references. I hope you guys enjoyed.